how's it going, everyone? It is Skullzi here with the latest and the greatest gaming news. Today I'm going to be breaking down literally everything there is to know so far about the Wayward Realms from Once Lost games. This game is being developed by the original creators and developers of the early Elder Scrolls games, going way back to the first one, the Elder Scrolls Arena, and leading up until the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. And many people in the community consider the Wayward Realms to be the main game that could potentially directly compete with the Elder Scrolls 6, as it is being developed by ex-Elder Scrolls developers and founders of the entire Elder Scrolls universe, as well as the fact that both of these games will most likely release around the same time. This video will be the video to watch if you want to know everything there is to know about this game, so be sure to share this video, that way the community can learn about this game and get as hyped as possible for this amazing, ambitious project. And yes, this game is quite ambitious and could change RPG games forever for the better in some very interesting ways. And this video is brought to you by the following amazing people. Thank you all for going above and beyond to support the channel and help bring the community future content like this. If you want to get a video shout out, you can support the channel like these fine people by going to any one of the links down in the description below. Now back to the Wayward Realms. First off, I want to thank the Once Lost Games Discord community over at the Council of Wisdom. 3 members over there took a lot of their time, like several days of their own personal time, to comb through all the Q&As, information, and statements made by the developers to create a list of all known information about this game. So huge thank you to the Crab, Herospecs, Stefan, and Bunkerboy99. Your hard work is much appreciated, and this video would have taken a lot longer to put together if it wasn't for your help. If you want to thank them yourselves or even join the Discord server for this game, there will be a link down in the description below. They even listen to your ideas and suggestions and take them pretty seriously, which is rare for a game developer these days and a good sign of things to come from this studio. Now let's break everything down there is to know about this game. So I combined all the documents sent to me by these 3 amazing people into an easy to follow list for the purposes of this video, so I will be reading this list directly and giving you my thoughts on any of it as we go along. And surprisingly, there is a lot of information here, so grab your mead, get your skooma ready, and let's start our adventure into the Wayward Realms. So the document sent to me begins by saying, the following is a summary of the statements of Ted Peterson regarding Once Lost Games' upcoming project Wayward Realms, which Ted has made on the associated Discord server. It was compiled by me, the entity currently known as Crab Herospecs on the Council of Wisdom, but who also goes by the name of Jacob. I was quite tired and very slightly inebriated for a good portion of the time it took to write this. Sorry for any mistakes. Please keep in mind that anything written here is subject to change before the final release, and most of it probably will at least a bit. Also, most of this is Ted's opinion. I've tried to make it very clear when it's extra opinionated. And we're gonna start with gameplay information. This game will be an RPG, absolutely not a life sim. Think adventuring, not administration. It will be a first-person game. If other perspectives work too, that might be an option. It will be single-player on release, multiplayer potentially, but never massive multiplayer. Casual players can play with pre-rolled characters with pre-made classes, or make Daggerfall Death characters in terms of stats and classes. Potentially there will be an option for a collector class who gets stats from picking up predefined or selected objects like books. The game would potentially generate new instances of the items you need to collect forever in order to perpetuate progression as normal. Skills should be based on whether an adventurer would use them and how practical they would be to level up. The example of an odd skill which falls under this umbrella is forgery. If you delve into the ruins and find exotic artifacts, no one would be able to tell if 1 or 2 were forgeries. For skill trainers, there should be something similar for everything, including magic skills. The village clever folk can help with the basics, but the time masters are hard to find and harder to train with. Finding a master to help you train at higher levels should not be easy. Finding a master would be a quest in and of itself, along with potentially another to convince them to teach you. As of September 19th, 2019, the player will not start in a dungeon but will get to one relatively soon. Exploration will be encouraged. World will aim to be almost as big as Daggerfall, but not generic, interesting to explore and roam. Magic will be different. It's going to have similarities with Daggerfall in terms of flexibility and customization, but in a lot of ways, it's very different. Spellcrafting will make a return. Magic cannot be bought off the shelf like a pair of boots. Potentially a spell you can get will allow you to anchor a single point in time and travel there, similar to Mark and Recall in Daggerfall and Morrowind. Ted doesn't like putting survival elements in his games, but some other members of the team do. Ted has said when we first were developing the Elder Scrolls 1 Arena, I had a long call with Scorpia, who was the biggest RPG reviewer of computer gaming world. Since she had played more RPGs than anyone, I wanted her advice. She recommended not forcing players to eat and drink, which was a common gameplay at the time. Let them concentrate on the adventure, not on mundane things like nutrition. She also, by the way, got us to have automaps. Before then, it was typical that players would have to draw out maps on graph paper while they played. Game might have a lot of skill checks, so characters can talk their way through pretty much everything. Ted thinks that letting players create classes the way you could in Daggerfall was a great idea. Ted would be interested in a lockpicking or dialogue minigame if it was fun. Ted wants the new starting dungeon to be unlike Daggerfall's, where you had to play a combat specialist to get past it as a new player. There will be lycanthropy. The game will not aim to have the power fantasy and simplification found in Skyrim. Every mortal is expendable and killable, but Ted can't get too into the idea of essential NPCs quite yet. Ted doesn't find the idea of owning a shop interesting as in an IRL shop owner. Thinks it pushes from RPG to life sim a bit too much and would be very complex and difficult to make, but recognizes that there is an audience for that. Mundane events could become interesting. The Baron gives you a quest, find X, but I don't know where it is. You have nothing but a keyword, you start asking around. Someone finally says, oh, maybe Y knows about X. She's right up the road. I'll put her house on your map. You have Y's house on your map, and it shows up on your compass too. You go to Y's house, she's at Pub Z, as her housekeeper tells you. Now that's on your compass. You go there, find Y, and directions to X on your compass and map. Selling an artifact could turn into a mini quest of its own as well. A random citizen shop owner might buy it for 10 gold because it's pretty, or the hermits on the mountain might have been looking for this thing for years. 90% of Daggerfall's features were semi-Easter eggs, which most players weren't expected to find, especially on their first playthrough, such as lycanthropy and Daedra summoning. Ted would not be against having semi-hidden features like this again, provided he could be sure that these things do not break the game. Ted had some friends on the old Elder Scrolls forums who played Daggerfall by glitching through walls and into the void outside, levitating around to get to other areas in the dungeon. They are known as the Void Rangers. If they are found and invited to the server, Ted will make that a legit way of playing the Wayward Realms. Borders between kingdoms should be dangerous places, but quite lucrative for bounty hunters. Unlike the Elder Scrolls 1 through 3, Ted thinks that accuracy should be based on player skill to avoid frustration. I do find it very frustrating that I have something big like a bear right in front of me and I'm having to hack at it with a sword, and I'm missing over and over again because my character's blade skill is not great. It is simple as this. Your aim is largely player skill, but the damage you do is largely character skill based. In fact, other words, I can hit the bear in front of me, but because of my blade skill, I'm barely tickling it, but at least I'm not hearing swoosh swoosh because I'm missing it so much. Ted likes the idea of calling down godly favors if the player is on good terms with the gods, but he is not quite sure how he would implement that. There will be different kinds of armor with different pluses and minuses. Bars have non-lethal combat in the form of drinking games. Ted likes the idea of including games within a game. Ted would like flying and wings to be in the game. And moving on to lore and factions. Crab people, crab people, crab people, crab... He just says crab people a whole bunch of times on this list. It's hilarious. Ted has a clear vision of what the setting will look like, but it is flexible. Setting is original, loosely resembles a high medieval setting. Ted says when he talks about a high medieval setting, he means late medieval specifically. Sheer-Gorath was originally Ted's self-insert, and Ted has someone similar to the original Sheer-Gorath planned. That's awesome. I love me some Sheer-Gorath. This one's a little different, but there are similarities with Sheer-Gorath. Ted plans to make a self-insert for Julian LeFay as well. Not only will there be more than one plane of existence, Ted thinks you'll visit more than one before you get to level 2. And that's kind of interesting. That's kind of a big thing. The setting will distinctly not be Tamriel. There will be at least 4 seasons. Humans will be a single race with the same racial bonuses and drawbacks regardless of skin tone. Awesome new races are planned for the game, implied to be playable, including Fey races. There will be at least one muscle race playable. Ted isn't sure if it should be Minotaurs. There will be no Catmen or Lizardmen playable, so as to distance the project from the Elder Scrolls for a variety of reasons, both legal and philosophical. Ted does not want to tie any playable races to one place. For example, purely aquatic races are most likely not going to be included. Human, elves, and dwarves will all be playable. Vampires will be a feature in the game, but their specifics, weaknesses, strengths, and stuff aren't really ready to be shared yet, nor are they sure if they're going to be playable or if they're just going to be a menace that you come across in the game. Skin tone will have cultural impact, but not gameplay impact. Ted wants people to be able to choose their backgrounds in a vague Cyberpunk 2077 kind of way. Various cultures will each have their own flavor, and multiple of these can come from the archipelago. Gunpowder is a maybe. Ted was also excited by the idea of silent air guns for assassins. Wayward Realms is set on an archipelago shaped like a broken boot. It is not terraformed, but it is influenced by people in some degree. In terms of climate, the archipelago will largely be closer to Russia than Italy or Africa. There will be large mountain ranges. There will be normal landscapes as well as fairly surreal ones. The entire archipelago should be more than 50,000 square miles, and the islands range in size from about a square mile to larger than the average average open-world game. The archipelago as a setting necessitates water defenses as structures and opens up storm drains as new semi-aquatic dungeon settings. There will be a lot of shore and bridges and wharfs. There's more to the world than you can initially explore, as big as it is, and there will be boats and piracy and also something that is censored for some reason. Lots of lush vegetation that will vary heavily based on terrain but is mainly very similar to Earth's flora, and some plants are indeed alchemical ingredients. There are multiple empires at play in the game world, but there is not a single governing body that has control of the entire archipelago at the time of the game's events. One kingdom on the archipelago is named Cid. It is rocky, mountainous, and misty. It has borders to the south with another kingdom. Cid is different from the other places. Cities will be huge. Ted says about as large as London, but I personally think either he doesn't know how big London is or he's exaggerating. Most likely the latter. Maybe he means medieval London. Although the game will almost certainly not start in a state of open war, a war eventually occurring is not out of the question. Monsters, culture, and magic all work in a big ecosystem that makes sense. Ted likes the idea of swarm creatures. Megafauna is also a possibility. Magic will be a hard magic system. Concrete rules. It will be factored into world building, how it was discovered, are new spells being found, what do people think about it. Ted is working on doing dungeon-based societies and civilizations. Ted likes the idea of gray morality in his works. He tries to make things like outworldly righteous organizations which are actually really corrupt, and vice versa with honorable evil organizations. The Inquisition is a major antagonistic force in this game, not the Inquisition from Dragon Age. No massive mages guild like in the Elder Scrolls. The magic system will at least start out as a soft magic system. In other words, a magic system where the fundamental rules, if there are any, are not explained. Magic is also rarer and harder than in the Elder Scrolls. Adventurers Guild seems a bit too generic to Ted. He hopes to have various guilds, such as those dedicated to the eradication of the undead. Ted likes the idea of warrior monks. Ted is interested in doing a few absolutely non-combat guilds, but they would have to be interesting and have conflicts with other factions, just like any other faction. Culture will affect a lot of things. One example is public bathing. Ted states as an example that one group has a holy spring where spiritual and physical cleansing has a religious significance, another is very prudish and considers that if you must cleanse, do it far away from others' eyes, and another considers it social, with sweat lodges and the like to be where friends and family hang out, etc, etc. This is Ted's statement on how he likes to design factions in order to make their relationship with the world and the player even more interesting. What are the official goals of the faction? What are the goals of the subgroups within their faction? Who are their allies? Who are their rivals, enemies? How powerful are they? And what can they do for the player? Ted is interested in being able to hire assassins or warriors to do quests for you, and in the possibility that it could all go terribly wrong. The world should be more disease-ridden than Daggerfall, and there will be leper-style communities of outcasts. Halt! Or something similar will be featured in the game as a guard alert sound. Ted is interested in adding golem magic to the game and has related concept art. About 3/4 of the lore masters in-game should be random, with at least one of the non-random ones being based on a real person who has helped a lot with the game. Lore masters believe in preserving the truth. That doesn't mean they're objective or on the same side, of course. The game is for grown-ups, so yeah, maybe some butts, boobs, penises, etc. might pop up, and also definitely dragons. Yay, dragons with boobs and penises! These are some of the game's systems. Like in Daggerfall, the game will feature an endless quest system allowing for you to play as a character and get new quests continuously. Only this time they will be awesome, and they're going to mold around your character and the world situation. Ted would like the player to have to visit locations multiple times in multiple different states, for example returning to a dungeon to find it flooded. The idea is that the game will support players' role-playing desires as much as possible, maximizing possibilities in that focus. The game should emulate a game master, like a dungeon master from D&D, which picks up on what the player wants to do with their character, intrigue, stealth, fights, etc., and tailors the experience to them, which is huge. A lot of emphasis is placed on this system. It will be the major part of the game, much more so than Bethesda's somewhat similar Radiant system. The game will be single player, although Ted hints that there may or may not be something a little more to it that depends on how things go. The game will evolve from the starting point. The example given is King George and Queen Bertha are married and are part of, let's call them, the royal faction of Kingdom X, but each is also a member of other factions as well, which are probably aligned because the royal faction of Kingdom X is so powerful. It makes political sense to support them. However, throw in a monkey wrench, maybe because of the player's actions, maybe not. Let's say the heir dies because of the plague or because of you. The new heir is with the royal faction, but not part of the Queen's family faction. The formerly aligned factions now have separate goals. The royal faction wants a smooth transition of power according to the king's wishes, but the Queen's family secretly wants to get one of their own into that position of power, and of course, most importantly for the player, is your reputation with each one of these groups. Let's say the Queen's family faction hires you to assassinate the new heir. You should recognize this as a high-risk, high-reward quest. Do it so no one except that faction knows it's you, and you're in tight with the most powerful of all factions. Go in, hack and slash, and not only are you now an enemy of the royal faction, the people who hired you are obligated to deny that they know anything about you. Of course, not all quests are that fraught, and helping the local blacksmith is probably not going to piss anyone off as much. Maybe his competition, but maybe not even. Luckily, no one is going to hire a level 1 assassin to kill the king's heir, so you'll be an expert in how the game works before things get too crazy for you. And also, if you're a renowned alchemist, for example, people will seek you out depending on how your skills and methods might be used. I think the politics stuff is cool, but there are players who just want to go in and not get overly analytical about all this, and that's why it's going to be more straightforward. So it's not a mystery in most cases what the major consequences of your actions are. Planting evidence in someone's property may have effects on their reputation, like a functional version of Brynolf's first quest in Skyrim. Ted thinks interacting with NPCs is very important, but shouldn't be too hard on a player. Asking a baron why there is a plague in his village may offend him, he may lie, he may actually tell you the truth, he may kick you out of the village. There's at least one king in the game, and killing him would be tough but possible, and would have drastic consequences on the world. Players should have identical reputation with individual NPCs. If you do a lot of quests for someone, you can get in to be quite friendly with them. Followers and spouses are both possibilities, but not certainties. Every quest in the game will be altered at least somewhat by the player's reputation and other relevant factors. Quests will also become available based on the player's reputation with the quest-giving faction. There's a proper system of law which may be different from ours, and yes, there are prisons. Dungeons should have multiple entrances and exits, and be big but in a way that makes sense. Not really the Daggerfall way of massive, sprawling labyrinths with several interconnected mazes with no rhyme or rhythm to them. Ted wants dungeons that have rationalities and reasons for being. There is a place for fuck-off, massive, big-ass maze dungeons like in Daggerfall, but there's so much more that can be done. Hints of hearing of legendary figures and finding their tombs, finding mythical catacombs under cities, essentially learn about a legendary mystery and then discover the truth, will be completely possible. Ted would be interested in a system by which Creature X hibernates in winter and Plant Z only blooms in autumn. The game will most likely have large battles. How big they are and how much influence you'll have on them as a player is yet to be seen, and testing would be required. Towns in the game should be themed on location and evolve over time, based on war, plague, factions, etc. Kingdom borders should shift over time. Storms' positions may be tracked and weather should make sense meteorologically, but at the same time, when asked about the weather system in September of 2019, Ted said he hasn't had anything officially planned quite yet. In terms of failure states, Ted says everything can go wrong, and it's not reliant on you doing X in Y amount of days. This is a reference to Daggerfall, where you could fail all sorts of quests, including the main quest, pretty much exclusively just by being late to doing things. And then Crab Haruspex lists some jokes that Ted made that he will personally take seriously and hold him to account if they don't make it into the game. Chips and dip will be featured in the game. There will be a town called Saud, Tat, and Sid. I probably didn't say that right at all. I'm sure there's some kind of joke I'm missing there. There will be an NPC called Lorem Ipsum and another NPC called Sloof Lurpa. So that's interesting. That sounds kind of like Simlish language. There will be a dandy class which gives you bonus stats for wearing unique clothes. And then here are a few technical details. The idea is not to have Daggerfall level procedural generation as much as possible, and they're going to try to handcraft as much of the world as they can. The aim is for the game to be much more polished and bug-free than the Elder Scrolls games like Daggerfall. The game will be made on Unreal 4, since it's in early stages they might migrate to Unreal 5. It'll be fully 3D, and the graphical style will probably be fairly realistic, no sprites other than maybe Easter eggs, I guess. The game's engine was decided on the basis that it would be highly moddable, so that means that there will probably be a modding scene to this game after it releases. And the game may not be fully voiced. Ted would prefer to go to the Morrowind approach, where most important dialogue is voiced, but the writers can write to their heart's content without having to worry about casting and paying VAs for every little bit of dialogue, which kind of makes sense in my opinion, and I'd be fine with that. There will be seeds and subseeds, meaning a dungeon's seed could be an underground city, which defines structures, textures, monsters, quests, etc., and its subseeds could add in bandit hideouts and vampire crypts. And here's the current state of development development of the Wayward Realms. Until funding is secured, the developers are all working part-time with as much time as they can. The game is planned to be part of a series. Whether the series will all be Wayward Realms style games remains to be seen. The game will ship when it's ready. Julian really dislikes having to put things out with bugs in them, which is a good thing. And then here are some confirmed things that the game will not have: a hollow earth, salt flats, a chosen one player character, serious life sim aspects, past what you would expect to find in a typical niche RPG game. Unless time allows it after development finishes on every other feature, which usually doesn't happen. Games are rarely finished, at least in terms of the developer's eyes. And as far as being a king in the game, it would be cool, but it would move the game from an RPG more to a war game or a socialization-based life sim, so Ted is somewhat against that idea as well. There won't be killable children. Ted is a parent and is very understandably uncomfortable putting killable children in this game, plus it's a legal nightmare in most places. And there won't be a book of in-lore racist jokes like in Daggerfall. There also won't be a fusion of magic and technology as the basis of the magic system. And that is everything that these amazing people, that Crab Harrow Specs, that Bunker Boy, and that Stefan spent all this time to put together for us. If it wasn't for them, this video wouldn't be here today. And I tried to make this video as organized and as structured as possible, but at the same time, it was just a legit list of all known and somewhat confirmed information about this game, as well as things that Ted Peterson and the other developers would like to see in the game as well. Hopefully this can kind of paint a better picture for you in terms of how amazing and ambitious this game will be. I don't think I've been this hyped for a new RPG in a very, very long time, and I really hope this game actually comes out with at least the majority of the features that was listed in this video. I would throw so much money at this game, and one of the main reasons I am doing this video is to bring more awareness to Once Lost games and the Wayward Realms, because I am very hyped for this game. I'm going to try to cover this game as much as possible, but that finishes up today's video. Hopefully this gets you hyped for the Wayward Realms, and remember, please share this video so this game can get as much hype as it deserves. Videos as well as games live and die by how often they are shared by the community, so please do your part for this amazing studio. They're basically working for free right now. This is something that really needs to get going here in terms of virality. As always though, what I want to know is, what do you think about all of this? Let me know what you think down in the comments below, and if your comment wins the internet, you may get featured in a future video. Be sure to like the video if you enjoy the content, and if you want to stay in the know when it comes to the latest gaming news, hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on so you don't miss the latest uploads. Follow me over on Twitter for other news that doesn't quite make into my videos, as well as other channel updates, and check for links down in the description below for the official 6's merchandise site, the 6's Discord community server, and if you want to have your hand in providing future content, there are links on how to be an exclusive channel member here on YouTube or over on Patreon as well. And as always, thank you for watching. Be sure to tune in next time, when I'm absolutely not going to be drunk at all while I stream Skyrim, I promise.
It just works.